Welcome, dear viewers of Mpumakapa TV, to this broadcast brought to you by Amaqhawe Ethu Foundation in collaboration with Mpumakapa TV. Please do receive our gratitude once again to your viewers for allowing us into your sitting rooms and extending your gift of time to us. This program seeks to bring to your homes topical issues so that we too can engage intelligently when these topics have been discussed around us. I am your host, Lennox Glass, and tonight we bring you Ambassador Willie Lentapo, also known as Ubram Kize, in the Umkhonto Wesizwe various detachments. Good evening, Ambassador, and many thanks once again for agreeing to be part of this program.
Good evening, Comrade Lennox, and good evening to your viewers too.
Thank you very, very much, Mr. Ambassador. Today, dear viewers, we wish to explore the significance of June 16, 1976 activities. We will take a brief look during the during, and post this very important calendar of our country. We also wish to look at the current skirmishes in our country between the foreign nationals and the South Africans. But before we do that, Mr. Ambassador, let's get to know you a bit better. You know, people want to hear from people that they believe possess a certain degree of information or knowledge. Maybe the first thing we would like to discover from you, Mr. Ambassador, at what point was the ambassador inducted in the country's politics in South Africa? By who, when, and what events did they trigger you to decide to leave the country, and which year? I know it's a very compounded question, but immediately after responding to these questions, people will have a better understanding who are engaging tonight. Thank you, Mr. Ambassador.
Thank you, Comrade Lennox. I was born in Alexandra Township in Johannesburg. It's an old township where people had freehold access to property. And it was surrounded by some of the most affluent suburbs in northern Johannesburg, what is now known as Sandton. It's still a few minutes walk into those suburbs and what is now known as Sandton. So from a very early age, any movement in any direction out of the township, you were confronted with affluence, white affluence. And you got to know that there is something that is different outside of the environment in which you exist. We had to walk to the zoo or to the Bishop Catholic bishop's house to go and do some chores there as an altar boy. So it meant that you have to go through some of those affluent suburbs, Houghton and the rest, to access Rosebank on foot. And if you have to go to town, it was the same direction, same thing would happen. So you got to know that there's something that is different between the life that you are living and what is happening just a few streets beyond. And the presence and harassment of police. Because once you are in that environment, you're always regarded as a suspect. You must be up to something untoward. You are disturbing the peace in those white affluent suburbs. And of course, what is now currently known as Sandton used to be a small holdings. That's where we used to walk to during the season when they were harvesting. We used to go there uninvited and help in the harvesting. You understand what I mean?
Yes, yes, of course, yes.
Yeah, we're just helping ourselves to
Yes, yes, yes.
what we could come across,
Nationalizing,
bicycles
nationalizing
or
the
anything,
crops.
even bicycles, yes.
Mm.
So the interaction between us and the white community and the police from that very age became a direct thing. It was quite confrontational in a way because we're in an environment where we are not wanted, where we are not expected. Number two, all the affluent golf courses around Johannesburg were a walking distance from where we grew up. So that's where we used to go over the weekends also to try and do some caddy work around those golf courses, Houghton or wherever, to just get some pocket money. So I'm saying that from a very early age, you're exposed to these two different worlds that we lived in. We used to go to Balfour Park, which was a walking distance again, to go and watch white football, the football league of the whites. So we used to go to that Balfour Park, but there was a small corner where all the blacks would be crowded. That's where we used to watch from because the whole stadium belonged to the whites anyway. But getting out of there back to the township after the game, it was another headache because you have to go through those white suburbs to access the township.
Yes, yes.
So I'm saying that level of consciousness started developing at that point. But for me, the main issue is when I started school in 1954. That's when formally Bantu education was being introduced.
Exactly, yes.
And then we're interrupted with our classes, 1955 to be exact, when the interruption started, when parents invaded the school and were told to get out of that premise. So we had to jump out of windows and jump the fence and get out back into our township. It was a boarding school for girls only, a Roman Catholic establishment. It's still there, a ghost reminder of what it used to be in the past. It's just buildings, dilapidated, left to rot. So we then had to get away from that thing. Then we were being told about this schooling. No, there was a disruption. And when we reconvened, we were allowed to go back to school. We then began to understand that there was a problem with our going to school, which we did not understand. But with time, it became clear that it was the education system that our parents were protesting against. And that is why they invaded the schools. But during that very period, a number of things started happening. There was a potato boycott that took place around that time. And we had primary school, fish and chips. I mean, we had Chinese and Indian shops that were selling fish and chips not far from the school. So it's been barred from buying chips or fish and chips. And those shops were being closed, disrupted, business disrupted. Then we understood that it is because there are people who were arrested for past laws, who were sent to Petal, in the farms in Petal area. And that some of them have died there. And there was a story that was doing the rounds, and I think it was carried also in New Age, about fingers being found or flesh being found in those potatoes. But I happened to know somebody who was a relative, was also picked up for past laws, sent to Petal, sold in that farm, and they happened to run away. And he used to tell that story about his fingers, his hands, that it was because of Patal. Now that slave prison labor was another issue, and there was a lot of hullabaloo and protest. As I'm saying, our regular fish and chips was disrupted because we were not allowed, and those businesses were not allowed to operate because they had to sell chips. Then there was a 1957 bus boycott that took place in Alexandra Township. People boycotting Patco and rather choose to walk on foot.
Go to work, yes.
To work. Now there are factories that were surrounding Alexandra Township. And beyond, people used to take buses, Patco buses, go in different directions in order to go to work. So people were walking almost every day. My father happened to work as a welfare officer in that very Patco. And one of my brothers, Ogataton, was part of the Alexandra Boycott Committee, active in that boycott committee. And they used to hold meetings at my father's house. So I got to know, and at that time I was I was 9 years old. So I could hear the conversations. I started picking up what was happening in terms of this Alexander boycott that was taking place.
Wow.
But when that was over, because Azequelo was quite assumed a violent dimension at some stage, and the harassment that followed, those were part of the organizing committee. The only person I knew from that group was Utatunzo, who had worked with my father at the Alexandra Health Committee before, under Dr. Kuma, before he relocated to Patco. So I knew him as one of the people, the elders who used to be a friend of my father, because they were working together.
Utatunzo, the one who became
Alfred Nzo, yes.
the SG of the ANC. Okay, now, Ambassador, thank you very much for this background. Right now, I would like us to zoom into your personal involvement. What is it that triggered you to say, I'm not an onlooker, now I'm going to be active in doing 1, 2, and 3? Which year was this, and what were the activities at the time?
Well, I'll have to fast forward it because of the many things that were happening in the township,
yes,
which could have led me to that, including the 1960 banning of the ANC, the arrests that were taking place, some people that I knew who got arrested during that period, and the trials that were taking place. And of course, the change in the Bantu education system and the declaration of the Republic in 1960. So all of those events took place. I was very much aware and alert of what was happening. And of course, I went to high school in 1963, started my Form 1. And one of our teachers was picked up at that Njanga High School for involvement in the activities of the ANC. So got to know there were certain things that were happening, not as much as one could have been politically conscious. But come to 1970, because I completed my high school in 1968. In 1969, I did my supplementary exam, and then I stayed at home and then worked a little bit in the Bantu Affairs Commissioner's office, Alexander Township, at the tax office. That's where I began to see a lot of things and understand what was happening. So when my term came to go to university, because I had applied, I was supposed to go to university 69, so I went 1970. On the 21st of March 1970, we celebrated what was then known as Sharpeville Day, which was organized by the SRC.
Sorry.
And the main speaker was Steve Biko.
Okay.
Who came to address us on that day. And the issue was about the need to establish a branch of SASO, which had been established in 1969. So they were campaigning for campus affiliation. So 1970, when he came there, that was the biggest issue. That was the big issue that was campaigning. And some of us met him afterwards, after the speech, to engage and discuss on the issue of the modalities for central affiliation and establishment of a SASO branch on that campus. I was with Josh Nene at the time, Puenyanda was also there, there was Mchuliga Shezi who were with him, and Musubid Mangena was one of the students who were there. We started our own little talks, trying to understand a lot of dynamics of what was happening on campus, because there were quite a number of issues that created a lot of unhappiness. And one of them was the possibility of transforming the college. It was at the time the University College of South Africa, which was going to be renamed the University of Zululand and made autonomous. And that process was linked to the process of the development of the Bantustan systems. Introduction of the BIC, Bantu Investment Corporation, and a lot of activities around that period. And we're able to make a link between this Bantustan system that was being upgraded and developed further after the muted independence of the Transkei and the moves that were beginning to take place. It became clear where the direction was going, that we were going to be transformed into a training center for civil service for the Bantustans, which is what some of the lecturers were saying openly, that is where our destination was, particularly for those of us who were in the humanities. So that became a bone of contention and the problem and the struggle between us and the university. And Umango Sutu Butelezi, because he was at the time taking a stance of being opposed to the Bantustan system, to the independence that was being suggested for KwaZulu. The campus became part of his playing ground in terms of mobilization, but there were also rumors that was being considered to be the first chancellor of the university. So there were a lot of things around him, and we organized a delegation to go and meet with him in Lund to just get to understand his plans. And when they came back, the story they gave us confirmed our fears that we might not be on the same page with him. And indeed, when the inauguration of the university as an autonomous university, when MC Botha, who was then Minister of Bantu Affairs and Education, came to officiate on the graduation ceremony, which for the first time issued certificates and with a coat of arms and the name University of Zululand, it became clear that this thing was becoming much more of a reality. It was no more rumors. It was happening. So we organized ourselves and opposed this thing, because at least by then we had formed ourselves into that SASO branch and were able to discuss these issues in an organized student collective rather than in whispers in the corners. So we're able to organize and decided that we're going to go on a confrontation head to head with the administration on some of the things that were beginning to happen on campus.
Okay. Now, Mr. Ambassador, we know that we are fully fledged activists in the terrain of the student, member of SASO, engaging and trying to fight the machinations by these people and their planned intentions. Now, I want us to fast forward once again. You'll pardon me for fast forward.
No problem.
Because, Ambassador, as you are aware, today marks, it's one of the most important calendar months of our country. Today marks June 16, 50th anniversary. Now, I want us to fast forward, go to this period, or shortly before this period, maybe around 2 months before June. Where was the ambassador and what were you doing in 1976?
I was served with a banning order in 1973 for my activities in the student organization because I'd already left campus in 1972 after the upheavals triggered by the speech that was made by Ethu at Ethu. And we decided to close all the universities. And after that, there was that backlash that came, and I left campus on that time, and we were then active in the communities because of the understanding. You know, we've always been informed by one thing, that we were black first before we were students. That whatever happens to us as students is because we were black. We're linking our challenges as students to what overall was happening in the black community, particularly because of this Bantustan system that referred to, which Ethu also referred to, made that link with the education system and the direction in which the country was going. So by that time, when we were out, in the conference that we held in 1972, a number of things happened. Two, it was clear that our education, going back to those campuses, was a non-starter. It was over. So our education in terms of university was over. There was no more any chance that it could be taken back on the conditions that they prescribed. Well, I had walked away in protest, so there was no reason. I had left, it was finished. But I couldn't get a job because the special branch was beginning to interfere. Wherever I moved after the first visit, they were monitoring me. So it became clear that there is no way that I could work. So I started volunteering in the South African Student Association offices in Braamfontein, working together with Boherina Gakwili, assisting in the office. So when we had that conference, I became in part indirectly part of the preparations because I was working in the office where the organizing was taking place because Herina Gakwili was the organizing secretary. So permanent organizer as it was called. So when we went to that conference, the heat was on, the special branch was behind everybody. Everybody was reporting harassment. Fierce debates started taking place. We had expelled our president at the time, Themba Sono, because he made a speech trying to suggest that we should take a soft line towards the Bantustans. Would hear nothing of that. We kicked him out of the conference. That was the end of him. And he had already, we had discovered that he had got a visa to go to the US to go and study. So he had made some concessions. So we kicked him out of the conference. And then we pursued whatever options that were open. One of them was a fierce debate about conscientization and then what? When the people are ready, then what? Then the question came about it, what do we mean by physical liberation? And then we started, some of us, discussing the possibility of arms struggle. Within that context, in little corners, with Mokis Mukwape and others who left shortly thereafter, discussing this thing of this other option, that all the avenues seem to be they are closed now. The regime is coming down heavily on all of us. And that is why we started agreeing that we have to work in our communities and then establish, particularly in the Reef area, SASO branches to organize youth and students in our locations, in the areas where we were. And some of us were then taken up as teachers, particularly in Soweto. George Nene went to teach in Orlando High, Mutalebu Mutalepule went to Cheki, Orlando West and Orlando High. George was in Morris Isaacson, I think Usiti also went to Morris Isaacson. Frank Chikane was in Naledi High with Potomo and Tata. So most of the people were taken by the schools in Soweto to teach. That gave them the opportunity to start organizing the students. To establish themselves as an organization, because it was becoming clear that unless they are also organized, they are not going to be able to resist the onslaught that the regime was up to. At the time, it was in the main the question of subtly introducing biblical studies, which were not part of the curriculum, but they were missionaries who were coming to school to interrupt and coming to teach. Those ones were being kicked out. It started at our time in the late 60s. We kicked them out. And that was a continuation. But then the issue of Africans started coming through, even at that early stage. Some of the people who were teaching there started engaging the students on those issues. By that time, I had left the country in 1974, after my banning order in 1973. 74, I got a suspended sentence early in the year because I violated my banning order. I decided to leave the country. So I left the country in 1974.
Wow. Okay. Mr. Ambassador, mostly from beyond the borders of our country, there's an assertion that South Africans are xenophobic. In the interest of fairness, balance, and justice, I think it would be prudent for you to state the case. Do you think South Africans are xenophobic? If yes, why? If no, why some people believe South Africans are xenophobic?
There are sections of the South African society that have come to believe that myth, that we are xenophobic. And it's got a particular complexion. It's black people. Let's be direct about it. There are sections of the society that believe that there is that element of xenophobia amongst blacks. And that's where, because that's where the conference takes place. You know, our achievements in 1994, starting from 1996, with the Influx Control and Group Areas Act being removed from the statutes during the time of the transition, before even the elections, when the negotiations were still taking place, a lot of people started leaving the rural areas and came to the urban centers. There was an internal migration that was not organized, that was quite spontaneous, because for the first time people could go to the urban centers to look for better prospects and a better life. And they came to none because it did not exist. The economy was not ready to absorb them. Around the same time, a lot of people from the African continent, beyond our region, because those have been part of this economy, they've been recruited to come and work in the mines, and they were part of the development of the South African economy. So they were part of us, in terms of language and culture and everything. Their situation was completely different. But there are those north of Limpopo, if one can use Limpopo as that geographic boundary, who started coming after African passports removed the restriction of entry into South Africa. That's a critical moment, because OAU were taking the decisions that African passports must not allow Africans to come to this country. It's part of the boycott of the isolation of the apartheid regime. So when that barrier was removed, a lot of them started coming in. The first ones were Zairians, which came in even before then. The apartheid regime, some of them, they must explain to us why they allowed those Zairians to come in before even that 1994 breakthrough, 93 breakthrough, because they started coming through that time when Mobutu was causing havoc there. The rest were Nigerians that came at the time of Abacha. A few of them, for that matter, who returned back to Nigeria after the challenges they faced were sorted out. But the most of the people that came were Somalis, who came via Nairobi, and Ethiopians who relocated to Bophuthatswana via Botswana. They were in Bophuthatswana, that's why most of them ended up in Northern Cape. You go to Kimberley, they speak pure Botswana. You go to part of Northwest, Lidach and others, you find people who were there before 1994, who came in when was Bophuthatswana, and when it collapsed, they moved on. A bulk of the Ethiopians started coming 1995. The rest of the avalanche was from Eastern Europe. Eastern Europeans that came into this country. Nobody says nothing much about them. The Krishas and the rest. And the human trafficking that started, and the brothels and striptease clubs and the criminality that started happening in the white suburbs. Nothing much is being said about it, but these Africans that were coming into South Africa, they could only go into where blacks were because of the spatial arrangement of apartheid. So they ended up in the townships. And they found accommodation there. Because people who had found RDP houses with no employment, they rented them out. And some of the people started renting into those IDP houses, but some of them were employed by these scrupulous employers who took advantage of their desperation because they were outside of organized labor and they could super exploit them. They took a lot of them into the farms, into the low-skilled levels in terms of labor in different areas. Then there was problems in Zimbabwe and Mozambique. There's a flooding of people from our region, came from those two countries because of the civil war that started in Mozambique and the political problems that started facing Zimbabwe, particularly after Lancaster House, after the elections, with the process of land reforms. Most of Zimbabwean whites came here. Nobody says anything about it. So I'm saying if South Africans were xenophobic, would have reacted to all these foreigners who came here. But these ones who came from the continent and the ones who came from Asia, from Bangladesh, from Pakistan, who had no relationship with those who came here as indentured labor from India in the early 20s. No relationship. They came. Others through human trafficking or all sorts of other means, leaving all the countries from wherever they came from. Crossed over and ended up here and set up shop here. That's what created the problems. It's not because of what sometimes we describe as porous borders. We were not ready.
We were not ready to
we're not ready for that push and pull. And our successes pulled a lot of people in our direction, and I think a lot of it and criminal elements took advantage of that and started bringing the human trafficking that flew into these countries, particularly from Eastern Europe after 1990. So I'm saying that's when unorganized immigration happened in this country, into particularly the urban centers, but with the Africans in particular. Employers took advantage of them, and of course we also accommodated them because we rented our houses to them, including these Pakistanis and that thing. We are the ones who rent. If it was xenophobic, we would have kicked them out.
Now, Ambassador, are you saying the skirmishes, displeasures that we notice and witness in our streets are misdirected? When we see these skirmishes between the foreign nationals and the South Africans taking whatever shape, would you characterize that as a misdirected anger?
No, but why does it have a particular ethnic face? Why would it be Zulu impis who are in the forefront of those skirmishes? Who transports them? Who transports them from one point to another? What are the issues that they are bringing up?
Now let's talk about that, Ambassador. Ambassador, before we had this pressure group called Dudula, and seemingly this pressure group has been absorbed or taken over by this March and March. Now, this March and March, please make the South Africans aware the dangers it presents to our country as part of this African continent. The March and March, what kind of danger? If they present a danger, the problems or challenges that they are raising, how do you think should find expression to the government? One,
yes. There are certain realities that we've got to upfront admit. One, that our economy is not growing in the manner in which we would have wanted to and expected. So unemployment has increased. That's part of the biggest challenge that we're faced with. And therefore, if people are coming from outside and those who have owned the means of production and who got employment capacity, take them in instead of South Africans because they're outside of organized labor and exploit them, taking advantage of them, it creates the problem of foreigners taking our jobs. They don't come here to discover those jobs, apply for them, or any other how. It's because there is something happening that pulls them into those low-skilled jobs. Why do they end up there? It's a phenomenon that we have to analyze very carefully. Why particular sectors? Who was employed in those sectors before? Why is now this Africans who are desperate economic migrants who come here to work find themselves in that situation? Why do you find in our service industries, the tourism industries, in restaurants and everywhere, mainly Zimbabweans? Why is it that you always find those who are guarding our cars, car guards, mainly from the DRC? You can see it's not by accident. Shop owners, they are organized in their own way. Somalis, Ethiopians, Bangladeshis, Pakistans, they don't compete among their own. They work in specific sectors. Whatever fake goods that they produce or sell, they've got sectors in which they operate. They don't disturb each other. They are not competing amongst themselves. Somalians come here with their problems, clans and the problems that they bring from home, like they do everywhere else. So it manifests itself here. Violence amongst themselves is manifested. But the criminal activities that are taking place involving foreign nationals has become a problem that associate anybody who is a foreigner as a suspect because they are not documented. Once you are not documented, it means whatever crime you commit or whatever you do, you cannot be traced. So they come in and disappear. But this organized crime that is taking advantage of the situation, including our own police. Now we know what was happening in some of the areas in terms of the activities of our
thanks to Madanga Commission.
So corruption also started taking root. So the violent expressions that we see are manipulated through social media and some form of organization. The moving of people from one area to another. You know, to bus people is not cheap. To organize march rallies is not cheap. We know it because we have done it ourselves. All political parties can tell you that that is not a low-cost venture. It's not cheap. So there is money that comes from somewhere. And that is what we need to establish. Two, there are political parties clearly who have come out to mobilize on this basis. Action SA, you have a Patriotic Alliance, some other parties in between, not very clear as where they say ACDP and the others. DA at some point was in that frame of mind with their Moonshot Alliance people. That was the hymn that they were singing on. And all working on a lie and a false proposition that all of these people were brought back by the ANC, were brought into the country by the ANC. The people that we lived and worked with are still in those countries. We visit those countries, our neighbors are still there. So that is not the truth. The problem is that there are challenges on the continent. We've been involved in the trying to find a peaceful resolution to most of the conflicts in the continent. And we know the state in which the continent is in. We've been there. There's no conflict that we have not been part of. And we continue to do so. So we have a clear understanding of the push factors, which pushes African youth towards the north. They drown in the Mediterranean Sea. That's a level of desperation that you can't take light. And also, what is happening in our own country, the push and pull factors that I've mentioned earlier. And in the process of trying to refine our immigration laws, we had to deal with the reality of their presence, including the criminal, organized criminal activities that started to complicate and introduce a new dimension to their presence in our country, and the corruption that started taking place at Home Affairs. So it's a combination of factors. I must say I'm happy with the new program that was announced by the President, which was elaborated upon yesterday by the Ministers of Justice, Home Affairs, and the Deputy Minister of Police, explaining precisely what is our response in terms of containing this situation and what is it that we need to do. The immigration laws that we've refined, the border management measures that they've been taking, but also I think the political education of our people to understand precisely why this thing is happening, and the engagement of the ambassadors here. Like tomorrow, there's an engagement between ANC leadership and the ambassadors to engage in these processes, and they are ongoing discussions because all embassies should be in a position to know who of their nationals are here and doing what. And they are now confronted with the reality that we have, that a lot of them are undocumented. Those who are documented, it has been established, because there are those who have been waiting confirmation for their asylum applications to be processed, which is something that we have to refine and facilitate. Work together with the United Nations on the new immigration laws that we have put in place and the arrangements that we are working on, because we're almost operating outside the framework of even the UNHCR as a country. And therefore we could not manage even the IOM, the immigration regimes that were signed off in terms of international conventions. We're completely underserved to some extent. So I'm saying I'm happy that we're getting back into line in that direction.
Ambassador, I'm told we are 5 minutes over the program. At this point, I would like to give you an opportunity to give us a parting shot. What is it that you want to say that maybe you did not say earlier on in the next coming 2-3 minutes?
No, all I can say at the moment is to our youth to be original and organic in organizing themselves and taking up issues that will make them play the role that they're expected to play as this generation, and guard against the influence of social media. Because this Gen Z mood and concept can be particularly dangerous, because a lot of ideas are planted through our cell phones and whatever media that we use to engage. All sorts of ideas that are becoming through. Young people are told everywhere, even on this continent, that they should not bother about being organized, that they are leaderless. There is no way that you can have a constructive process going forward and playing the role that you want to map out for yourselves if you are not organized, if you do not have a leadership that will provide that particular direction.
I thank you very, very much, Ambassador Willie Lenchapo. On that note, dear viewers, we've come to the end of our program. Please make a date with us next week when we hope to bring you another exciting program. But what we know now is this: South Africa cannot at any point prevent cross-border movement for many meaningful reasons, but we can regulate this in the interest of balance and the national protection of our country and our economy. We just have to find better ways to regulate this. It can be managed more. effectively. We've seen this in other countries. For instance, you have countries like UAE. UAE is a population, their population, Ambassador, they constitute only 12%. That is the national. The rest of the people in UAE are foreign nationals. They constitute over 80%, but they live there in peace and harmony. No one is fighting with them because the immigration there is very well regulated. For now,
And they provide the labor force that they need.
exactly to make them grow big as they are today. Dear viewers, on that note, we've come to the end of our program. Mr. Ambassador, say good night to the people and wish them a very good June 16 events throughout the country.
Well, good night. This is the 50th anniversary. It's a very important anniversary. We need to sit down, sit back, and reflect very seriously where we come from, where we are, and where we are going. We can only have the South Africa and the Africa we want if we are organized and united. Thank you very much.
I thank you very much, Ambassador. Lenos Class signing off. Good night.